Lars right now on FM News 101.
Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. Pleasure to be with you, and I'll be glad to get back to your phone calls and emails at 866-HEY-LARS. That's 866-439-5277. Emails go to talk@larslarson.com. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Jim Pikl, who is a trial and appellate lawyer, board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in Consumer and Commercial Law. Mr. Pikl, thanks for taking the time.
Lars, thank you for having me on your show.
Tell me about this situation involving customers, the company Best Buy, and the FBI. What's going on there?
What's going on is the FBI had people that were working at Best Buy for the Geek Squad, which is the part of Best Buy that will repair your computer for you. Somebody, a doctor in Florida, took his computer in, blue screened, he took his computer into the Geek Squad to have them work on it. The FBI agent apparently got it working because he found child pornography photographs on the doctor's computer and, of course, then issued a warrant based on that and searched the doctor's home computer, found more child pornography, and they arrested him.
I'm glad to see child pornographers and those who traffic in this stuff prosecuted and punished under the law. But this guy who was working in the Geek Squad, was he a full FBI agent just working at Best Buy undercover, or was this somebody who had been hired by the FBI to act as their representative, but wasn't, let's say, an FBI agent, but was in fact a computer fixer, who was doing work on the side for the FBI?
That's a good question, but as far as the legal issues go, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay, fair enough, because they'd be an agent either way. So what's the legal issue, and is it legal for the FBI to use information that they obtain in this way?
Well, what you're alluding to is what's called the Exclusionary Rule. And what the Exclusionary Rule is, it's a rule of procedure that says we want to encourage the police to use lawful means to conduct their investigations.
Yeah.
And if they use unlawful means, we're going to take the evidence away from them and not make it admissible in court. In this case, it kind of depends a little bit on what the motivation was of the FBI in putting this guy in the Geek Squad position.
Well, their motivation was to find bad guys, right?
Well, the problem is that even just a regular employee at Best Buy that's not an FBI agent, if they find child pornography on your computer, they've got to turn you in too.
And I hope they do.
So,
I hope they do.
It doesn't really. That's why I say it doesn't really matter what this guy was doing as far as who he was working for and was he a plant. The question becomes: did the FBI use some illegal tactic to get the guy's information from him? In other words, an unreasonable search and seizure.
And what have the courts found on that?
Well, it depends. Again, if you invite me to your house for dinner and I go in your bathroom and I find your cocaine stash and I go back and I tell the police, hey, Lars has cocaine in his bathroom, that evidence is admissible. They can get a warrant based on my informant's tip and they can raid your house, find the stuff, and it's admissible. On the other hand, if the police come to me and say, Jim, hey, we think Lars is a druggie, get invited to his house for dinner for us, you'll act as our agent, you'll go in there, you'll find the stuff, and then you come back out and tell us what there is, they can't do that. Because if the police themselves can't do it, conduct a search without a probable cause, they can't have one of their agents do it either. And when you said earlier this guy was acting as an agent, that's exactly the issue. Was he or wasn't he? Because if he wasn't, it's fine. If he was, it's not fine.
See, because I've run into these issues before in the topics we talk about on the program, like if the police can't get let's say a wiretap warrant to listen in on your phone call, but your friend calls you up on the phone and starts chatting you up about some illegal activity and records the phone call. If he does it on his own, he can probably hand the tape to the cops, but if he's doing it as an agent of the cops, then it does make a difference, and that's why I was asking about whether or not these people were working there for the FBI, or are these just, honest, law-abiding folks who work at Best Buy who say, hey, this guy's got kiddie porn on his computer, we ought to tell somebody about it. And in that case, it does make a difference, doesn't it?
The agency situation is what makes the decision. That's correct.
Yeah, so what's going to happen? And I guess I'd ask you this. There's also a concept in the law called expectation of privacy, right? So if I go and rent a hotel room, my expectation is I have a private place to spend the night and sleep and all that. If I find out that the hotelier has put a camera in the room and is either audio taping or videotaping or any of those things, I had an expectation of privacy. Do you have that same expectation when you take a computer in to have it repaired at Best Buy?
I don't think so, because you are voluntarily subjecting yourself to the search of your property by another person. It'd be similar in your hotel example if you said, yeah, it's okay to put the camera in my hotel room, and they did that, and then they found out you were doing something nefarious, and they busted you for it. So by the fact that you go to a public location like that or a public business and you ask them to do this work, you would no longer have an expectation of privacy in what they find. And this really came up before even computers. It came up with when back in the old days when we were kids, you had to develop film that you took pictures in a camera, right? You'd take it to Walgreens and you'd get it developed, and they'd find the pictures of your kiddie porn on your your developed roll of 35mm film. Well, what happened was the government said, well, these guys are perfect opportunities for us to catch these bad guys, and so we're just going to make it a law that you have to turn them in.
So in that case, well, hold on. If they don't turn you in, they're committing a crime?
Yes.
They are?
Yes, they're accessories.
Okay. So in this case, should we expect to see more of this? And if the case law is so clear-cut, why is there even a question being raised about this practice?
I think people are just concerned about their privacy. People have an incorrect view of what their privacy rights are. Everybody thinks they're a lot broader than they really are in the law. And I think it rubs people the wrong way that, look, this guy was just trying to get his computer fixed. He didn't know these guys were going to turn this into a federal investigation. But you know what? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm like you. The guy had kiddie porn on his computer. He deserves to go to jail.
See, and I just want to make sure that these things, the reason I ask these questions, I don't want to see these cases get tossed by some liberal judge who says, oh gosh, you can't do that. And so let me throw you an alternate example. I go to get my car washed, and I say, I want you to wash my car. And I leave my car at the car wash place, and they wash the car, but while they're doing it, they think, well, we'll wipe off the inside as well. And they wipe off the inside, and they find that bag of cocaine you were talking about. And I say, but hold on, I asked you to take care of this car. I didn't ask you to go through and search the interior of it. Is the tech who's working on that computer going beyond just making the computer work again when he goes and searches through files on the computer? Is there a legal difference there?
You'd make a great trial lawyer.
Well, should I take that as a compliment, Mr. Pikl? Well, I mean, I'm just asking because when you ask to have your car washed, you don't say, by the way, go through the jockey box, the glove box, and see if there's anything in there. But I'll bet it happens more often than we think.
I think you're right. I think, and that's why we have lawyers, and that's why they make clever arguments, and that's why some people get off because the lawyer will make a really good argument like you just made, and the judge, liberal or not, I mean, the judge is swayed and says, well, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's a problem, and he'll toss the evidence. And I don't think it doesn't necessarily mean that they're liberal or bad judges. It's just that sometimes lawyers make good arguments and persuade the judge, and that's what lawyers do.
I guess even talking about this on the air, since we know there are probably some people out there who are engaging in this kind of thing, this alerts them to that possibility, although it sounds like some of them are still willing to walk in and try and get their computer repaired, thinking that somebody's not going to see the evidence of their crimes on it.
Yeah, I don't know what people are thinking they're committing crimes. I've just never kind of had that in my wheelhouse. So I know if you're going to commit crimes, be careful because you'll get caught.
I guess I figure the best way to catch criminals is try and figure out what are they thinking, what are they trying to get away with, and how can we legally find what they're doing. One last thing. Those people are called
detectives, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Should there be a good faith exception? Because usually it's, well, you broke the rules, so we're throwing all the evidence out. If the police and the FBI are operating in good faith and they believe that what they're doing is right, and they happen to have stumbled on one of these and it was imperfect, should the evidence still be allowed in? Because one of the things that's always bugged me, I'm very pro-police, but if a police officer says, I don't care what the rules say, I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway, he doesn't get punished personally. The system and the public gets punished by throwing the evidence out. And oftentimes the detective in that case, who's willing to break the law or violate the Constitution, doesn't see any real punishment himself.
Yeah, a famous Supreme Court justice phrased it like this. He said, why should the criminal go free because the constable stumbled? And that's the flip side of the exclusionary rule, is that if there is a good faith exception in the law for the police who do something that's wrong, but they have articulable, reasonable beliefs that they can tell a judge, here's what happened, here's why it was wrong, here's what my good faith basis was, and then again, the judges are people, that's why we call them judges. They're the ones who decide whether that's going to come in or not. And it's a motion to suppress, and sometimes they're granted and sometimes they aren't. And those are case-by-case basis, though. I'm not sure you could really have a blanket rule This evidence comes in, this evidence goes out.
I wouldn't want it to be blanket, but I'd want to be able to make the case. Look, this officer tried to do everything by the book, and something, it's an imperfect system. It involves human beings. He made a mistake. It was not intentional. We shouldn't punish, the society by saying this criminal goes free simply because this man stumbled. And I guess we can look forward to perhaps a more conservative Supreme Court to interpret these things when they get appealed, right?
So they say. We'll see after the 20th.
I certainly hope so. Mr. Pikl, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much for your time.
Anytime, Lars. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
You bet. Jim Pikl, who's a trial and appellate lawyer, about this Best Buy case. And I'll bet a few of you want to sound off on it. 866-439-5277. Emails go to talk@larslarson.com. Portland's best traffic is right here from Brett Recamp on FM News 101 KXL.
Lars, thank you. It's